Let's do it.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Remind podcast. I'm Dr. Ashleigh Moreland and I am joined by my co-host David Masterton. Today is part 2 of a 2-parter on resilience, and I had a bit of a rant last week about how the word resilience has been bastardized to mean something completely the opposite to what it's actually designed to mean. So if you haven't watched that episode, I strongly encourage you to go back and watch it because David's brain exploded all over the place.
We had to clean up afterwards. It's all right.
Yep. So today we want to focus more on, I guess, redefining resilience. What do we want resilience to mean? If it's not that old toxic stuff and it's not override, then what is it? And I'm going to suggest it's inner resourcefulness. So what we're going to be talking about more in this episode is a bit more about understanding, I guess, like a nervous system aligned definition of resilience that's more true to the textbook definition of resilience, looking at capacity, looking at regulation, looking at things like self-awareness and relational safety with ourselves and with others. So if we're not pushing through and we're not overriding in order to be enough, in order to prove our worth, in order to be true to our word, which we spoke about last week, what does healthy resilience actually look like? Actually, the first thing that just came to my mind, Dave, was something that you mentioned in the last episode, and you spoke about self-abandonment. And I wonder if a frame of resilience could be the ability to stay present with challenge without bypassing yourself.
I mean, the words sound great. It sounds great, but let's put it in practical terms, right? Let's add a bit of context. And if we go back like 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, or whichever one it was, right? It's the words sound nice, but if let's just load some context to give this some weight, some heftiness, right? What does that look like?
Well, there's a few pillars, right? So we could look at from parenting. Imagine staying present if your kid's having a full-blown meltdown, or if you're a leader, how do you regulate yourself and manage your own emotions before projecting into a situation where there's conflict or someone's made a mistake or, whatever?
Well, coming back to resilience, right? Because we've gone from what we call the distorted resilience, which is shield and armor, sword, battling through, right? And just keep on battling, as opposed to resilience being flexible, pliable, a bit like a palm tree in a storm. Now, the only two things these definitions have in common is they only exist in difficulty. They don't exist in peace. So to be able to call on these things, there has to be some sort of difficult environment.
So true.
So to be able to come into what we are now talking about, which is being resilient, is how do we handle that difficulty in a resilient way, which by the standard old distorted definition would mean giving up, i.e. not being resilient. So it's thinking about that. So let's just sort of say, how do we not abandon ourselves? Well, let's just say we spoke about not showing up for an episode, right? Now, imagine not showing up for the episode was the most resilient thing we could have done. However, it's then sort of going, well, now we're sort of challenging like how much of a grip does the old definition have? Because, we should be showing up because we kind of talk about this stuff. We should be on top of our emotional regulation if we're talking about it. We should be able to do this. We, if we needed to bulk record, we should bulk record so we're on top of it, so we're on top of life and all of those kind of things. But let's think of a way where you can give yourself grace, even though everything around you, that storm is screaming, if you give up, then there's something wrong with you, right?
Which is
The
actually not the
thing
storm screaming. It's probably your parent or a teacher or someone from your early life.
that's the storm. What creates the storm, right?
Yeah, it becomes your
It's
inner voice now in the storm.
yes. So it's sort of like for me, what as someone coming into this as a changed view of what resilience is, my biggest question is, show me, because I look around, I can't see anyone modeling it. Not in this definition. Now, they might be modeling it, but I'm not necessarily seeing it in this particular instance. But it's like, okay, when we look at not doing something as a way of being resilient, like it's still giving me an ice cream headache. Not doing something is being resilient. Just imagine that. It almost feels like an oxymoron. And I'm talking to myself at this stage.
Well,
So
I'm going to mirror this back to you, Dave. So, what I'm hearing is that it's easier to push through than it is to say no to someone.
it's easier
Or
to
easier to
feel,
push through than it is to let someone down.
well, the resilience part is you do it even though it's not comfortable. So if you go back to the very start of last week's episode, that was my version of resilience.
We
It's
can
that
do
thing that,
something, we can do things that are not comfortable without it being self-harm.
and I guess that's sort of the idea. And this is where there's a really big chasm between where I thought the definition of resilience was and where it actually is. So it's sort of like resilience is like previously for me, grit and all of these things. Now I have to sort of go, it's resilient of me to honor my nervous system when it says you should not be doing something right now and to rest. That's resilience. And it's sort of like, oh. And you know that little automatic part of your brain sort of goes, well, something doesn't feel right here.
Yeah.
Because the conditioning says resilience is pushing through. Sword, armor, shield. So I suppose that's a really big thing. And when I talk about people modeling it, every time what the action, and I'll be a bit clearer, the actions that they model while using the word is what we're saying is the distorted version of it.
Yes.
Now,
100%.
when people say what is resilience in what we're saying now, what we're actually sort of saying, and I think you said it's honoring yourself. It's listening to your intuition at a top priority.
Yeah.
The highest priority. And if your intuition goes against things that you have been forced to do, but your intuition's saying no, like for example, let's just say you're going paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, and your intuition says you need to quit your job. So, whoa. Okay. Now, you can pick your resilience here. The resilience is, one, let's go to my old version of it prior to last week's episode. That is, I'll keep on doing it until I find another job. I'm not stupid. I'm not just going to get served up crap the rest of my life and just take it because I don't have any self-confidence. But I'm going to start looking for another job. But let's just say the jobs that I'm applying for that I would go to need to be at similar or better. Or I need to be called to the job somehow. Now, I'm applying for these things, but I'm not getting interviews. Or I'm getting to interviews, but I'm not getting the job. The plane's not landing yet I'm still at this other job. And the intuition's saying, quit your job, 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 quit your job. And it just keeps on going. And it's like, I'm trying, and I'm doing this, and I'm trying that. And, and my resilience is against the intuition versus, oh, now, if I was to honor myself and if I was to honor my intuition, I'm abandoning the logic. And logic hates that. Don't you dare. I will scream at you. I will give you every reason why you're wrong, every reason why you're going to fail, and every reason why you should be scared. So you stay right there. Where the resilience is, whew, I need to quit my job. I know I need to. And I know I need to. I'm not questioning it. It's just the conditions in which I will leave. That's what I'm debating.
Yeah.
And so your intuition saying, go. Now, for what purpose? Why can't I be comfortable in this difficulty, right? Because the difficulty is I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Now you want me to add more difficulty by leaving somewhere I'm not supposed to be and jumping into complete uncertainty. Thank you very much. So in my mind, previous David, resilience was stay at the job until you get the exit that you're looking for that comforts your logic.
Yeah.
It's also self-abandoning because your intuition's saying, quit your job, 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 quit your job. Now, if you're to do that, that's being resilient, apparently.
It's really
as I say it feels
because
icky.
as you're speaking here, obviously you're giving a very abstract example.
Yes.
But I think it's really valuable because the other part of this conversation for me is about faith and trust. And this, you and I both have
100%.
a faith that, I guess, a faith in the unseen, right? Where it is scary. The capacity. So again, come back to that meaning that I said last week. The capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties is a part of resilience. Is it difficult to trust a spiritual prompting when you have no evidence of it? Yes,
Whoa.
extremely difficult. But are you going to be courageous enough to step out in faith and follow that prompting? If yes, that's resilience, because you're flexing your capacity to withstand the difficulty of trusting something that's unseen, of trusting your intuition. So that's how I loop that back around. And I think that even though that's relevant to the conversation on resilience, that's how I see resilience working there. But that's more about, because you're saying your old definition was pushing on and pushing on and pushing on and ignoring your, I guess, like more spiritual prompting because of lack of trust or lack of faith and needing the logic and answers, needing the evidence, the tangible. So you're overriding more of a spiritual prompting rather than a nervous system survival response. So that's kind of how I would differentiate that.
And at the same time, trying to give some relevance to the old meaning. At this point, like if you're like me and you've come from old meaning to new meaning, then it's sort of like, okay, I see the pattern now, because I would have been sort of seeing the resilience is not just giving up. Just because it got too hard, you want to give up and just lay on the couch because everything's getting too hard, David.
But I think that's an important part of the conversation, right? Like, are you giving up on your job because it's too hard and you're challenged and you're not learning enough and you're not liking or are you responding to a spiritual prompting? Because they're different things. And this is what I say to clients all the time.
Yes.
I literally just had this conversation with a client this week. It's like, well, are you moving away from something, i.e., I'm trying to move away from a job I don't like, or are you trying to move towards something, i.e., I've got a calling to do this thing over here and my soul is on fire for it? Because they're not the same things. And if I
100%.
support you to move away from something, i.e., eliminate the difficulty, if I'm trying to move away from something, but I don't know what I'm moving towards, then there's a gaping hole.
Yeah, and
all
without
I'm doing
faith
is avoidance.
Yeah, if there's no faith or there's no awareness outside of the logic, and I'm coming very much from my own experience, that if I can't logically figure out why or where I'm going or what I'm trading what for, then I'm just giving up because it's too hard. and I
Yes.
don't give up because it's too hard. So it's sort of, I'm trying to paint the light of, okay, if you've seen it that way, I understand why. And this is how it might manifest
Yeah.
into these real feelings of you being confused and looking at this sort of going, no, I don't agree. Well, number one, you don't have to agree, but just be
Yeah.
open to the fact that if you did agree with the old version, this is what it might look like in quite an extreme example.
Yeah.
Because even in my example, I wasn't giving up on myself. I wasn't bypassing the intuition. I knew what I wanted to do. However, I was holding out for the right conditions to jump. And at that point in time, knowing what I needed to do to move on and to hold the line until I found the ideal opening to exit was
Yeah.
that resilience. But it's
Totally.
like, oh, that resilience at what cost?
Yeah.
Right? Because
And this
it's,
is so powerful, Dave, because from a biblical perspective, which I really get a lot of wisdom from, there's so many examples of resilience being the capacity to have faith in a calling. And sometimes people are not going to like it because they don't have the window into the calling that you do. They haven't got that vision. They haven't been given that intel or that wisdom or revelation that you've got. And so I see the resilience in this. Like, let's say you've mentioned this 100 times. It's very easy to do something when 99 others are doing it with you and there's only one who's not. But it's very difficult when you're the one. And so to do something and to have the courage to be able to step out in faith. That's why we say step out in faith. To have the courage to step out in faith, even in the discomfort and the challenge of uncertainty, that's resilience. 100%. That's resilience. But I really want to get clear on, I guess, overriding intuition, more of like a spiritual prompting, as opposed to coming back to the flesh meat suit stuff, which is overriding our nervous system survival responses. They're kind of different concepts and they can be interrelated, but they're quite different because one is at the spiritual level and there's that spiritual resilience, which is about learning how to step out in faith and have trust, sitting in the discomfort of the unknown. And one is more human level resilience, which is just doing the tangible practicalities of daily life, of showing up for work and doing the things that we need to do. Sometimes all the time, what building healthy resilience at that human level looks like is implementing really, really healthy things like boundaries, learning to say no, having somatic awareness of our physical flesh meat suit body, noticing the sensations, being able to name the sensations, being able to respond to those sensations to create safety, and being able to sort of manage and respond to our nervous system from there and make decisions that honor our nervous system, not honor the trauma response or the fear that's underlying it, like fear of letting someone down, fear of not being good enough, fear of them judging me, fear of whatever else comes up. So I think that they're really closely interrelated, but also super important to separate them out for the perspective of one is like your example is a very spiritual example because it's talking about the unseen, whereas I'm looking at this from a very human example, which is very physical and tangible and nervous system kind of level. So
but
they
I
go
do,
hand in hand.
and look, one feeds the other because in my example, it is, well, the only reason I'm still at it is because of the physical. Now, you might sort of say abundance versus all of that could be labeled as more spiritual in all of that, but it's the physical body. It's how you would physically feel if you were to quit your job. It is, your body is screaming at you. Don't you dare do that. It's picking its bad and it's going with the safety of certainty. The nervous system at that point is what I'm sort of anchoring into. Because if the nervous system was aligned spiritually, there'd be there is no contest. You would have walked out the door and been happy about it because it's your physical's lining up with it. Your body's supporting you. Could you imagine how cool healing would be if your body supported you every step of the way?
Yeah.
You made a decision.
Could you imagine how beautiful healing would be if you supported your body every step of the way?
But you know what I mean?
Including,
it's sort of like...
it's both ways. It's a relationship.
Yes.
And it's communication, which is mutual. Your body's communicating with you and you've got to communicate with your body. Like, it's so beautiful.
But this is where we're coming out of the conditioning, right? So now in this point in time, your body's not going to be with you. Your body's going to have to learn that resilience and know that it's okay. While your spirit's telling you need to move this way. And it's how you draw that in, that bridge between the two.
And it's increasing the capacity to hold it. Totally. I totally agree.
Like it'd be incredible. And I've been rewatching The Matrix, which has been quite cool. And one thing that stood out, and it's kind of linked to what we're talking about, but when they were talking about this line that came out, it was around the difference between free will and choice. And it came down to Neo talking with the Oracle. It's sort of like, if you already know what I'm going to do, how is there free will? And she sort of says, because the choice you've already made the choice. You're just here to figure out why.
Yeah.
And so think of it when it comes to where you feel resilience has to come in. If spiritually you're feeling something that's sending you in a direction, it's normally uncomfortable because you're coming from a place of conditioning. Chances are you've already made the choice to go that way. You and your body are just trying to figure out why and how. So it's about lining that up. And so I guess that's where resilience comes in. And one last thing I wanted to say is, imagine if resilience was lying on the couch. Imagine if resilience meant that your intuition said to not do that thing. And then applying this, that resilience doesn't mean weakness.
Yes.
Because
absolutely,
the old definition would look at this new definition and go, you're weak as piss.
Yeah.
Right? So
100%. I love that. I wholeheartedly agree. I don't think I have anything else to add.
Well, I mean, it's only fair. I fried your noodle this episode. You fry my noodle last episode. So
yeah, totally.
All right. Well, look, on that one, guys, if there's any other questions you have, if you want us to deep dive more on resilience or anything else, if you want us to talk about The Matrix, well, it's pretty relevant to me.
I'll have to watch it first. I am so sorry to admit I've never seen it.
It is, it blends a whole lot of concepts that you and I talk about and adds a real sort of dystopian view of technology. However, if you remove the technology layer, there's a lot that sort of resonates with conditioning and fear. And
I'm very much looking forward to
what actually resilience looks like.
Wow.
So, anyway, on that note.
So, guys, I'm going to ask a reflection question to finish off this conversation, because if you didn't listen to our episode last week and you didn't go back at the start of this and listen to it, 100% go and listen to it or watch it, because you're not going to have the context of what we're talking about if you don't. And I want to ask, what or where or when have you mistaken override for resilience? So what's the evidence of that old toxic mindset or definition in your life of what resilience is? Where does it show up? Then maybe ask yourself, why is it showing up? Why did you override? Why did you choose to override your nervous system, to override your survival responses, the alarms that were going off saying, I'm exhausted, I'm this, I'm that, this doesn't feel right for me? Why did you choose to override it? What were you afraid would happen if you didn't? And then if you no longer had that fear, what would you have done instead? What would that have looked like? If you weren't overriding your nervous system, what would you have chosen instead?
Mm.
I'd love to hear from you. And don't hear what we're not saying. Sometimes the reality of life is that we have no choice but to override. Well, I think we always have a choice, but the preferable choice is to feed your kids, not let them starve.
Yeah.
Or, there are some circumstances in life, and, I've been in a bit of a season of this myself where I know that there's an end date. I know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm very aware of override in my life recently, but it's a conscious choice that I'm making, knowing that on the other side of that deadline, on the other side of that end date, I get to intentionally rest and repair. And we
And I
don't
think
get,
that's we should go back to that burnout video that we did
yes,
to
hammer that point home, because it's okay. Like, your nervous system can handle a short-term override. Like, imagine driving a car and you're redlining the engine. Your engine isn't just going to completely die if you redline it one time. But if you redline it and expect it to tolerate being redlined every single time you drive it, it's going to burn. You're going to burn out your engine.
You're gonna bend a valve for sure.
Exactly. So again, analogy of imagining your body is like a car. You can push the limit. You can push the line. You can redline your body for a period of time. But you cannot expect to get up and do it day in, day out, and not have consequences. There's going to be a consequence. We actually have a whole entire program now on burnout. So if this is resonating, please reach out. I don't know why it just literally occurred to me just then. I never thought about it, even though this whole entire last 2 episodes has been relevant to this. But if this is you, if you're recognizing that override is such a big part of your life and it's almost a part of your identity, it's just who you are. You don't even know who you would be if you weren't overriding your nervous system. You don't know how to listen. You don't know how to respond. That's evidence that you need help to learn. And we have a program that specifically helps you to do that. It's priced at what you would imagine paying for probably just a couple of psych appointments, really. So super accessible, super achievable, and it's all there for you. So reach out if you want info on that.
Awesome. All right. Till next week, people. Stay resilient.
Bye.